Welcome, friends. Welcome to today's Reconsider It live stream. Best live stream you're going to see all day. Here on this live stream, we are having a discussion stream. We are having a discussion-based stream. You hear some music playing in the background. That comes from one of my streams, one of my instrumental streams. Unspoken, episode 6 from September 26th, 2025. And here on this discussion stream, we're going to be continuing along with our existing themes from the previous discussion streams. If you've been following us, if you've been joining us, participating with us. Speaking of us, Trusto is in the place. Yes, that is high quality. What are these themes we've been talking about in the recent streams, on these recent discussion streams? What are the themes? They've been largely rooted in communication principles, core communication principles, subtle nuances, extending into territory such as giving formal speeches or leading discussions in some way, such as in a professional setting, leading a meeting, giving a presentation, leading a class of some kind, leading a live stream, being a musician or performer, leading a, performance setting. You're the one recognized as talking. That's the summary of what these themes are about. Success patterns that you can use, ways that you can increase your success in this domain of communicating when you are leading a discussion or otherwise leading a part of a discussion. Those communication themes have been the most recent streams, which is good. So we're going to be continuing along those lines and extending into the topics of influence, talking a little bit more about that. We talked about that a few streams ago. I think that was back in episode 2, but don't quote me on that. We're talking about influence a little bit, which includes how do you have influence upon others who you interact with, and also how do you have influence upon yourself. So that topic we touched on briefly. We're going to go into that a little more today as well. We're going to continue the communication themes. We're going to talk a little bit more about influence. It's going to be very, very exciting and beneficial for you in multiple ways. I see Andy is with us. Welcome, Andy. And in this whole subject area, we have got my prior professional experience in these areas. My regulars know what this is all about. I'm going to recap this for you as well. Moser is with us. Yes. This is good. So my credentials, we say, include many years being an educator in a professional capacity, including on different topics, technical areas has been my primary substance of my professional occupation. But also included in that is leading discussions, leading classes, writing materials for classes, coaching others one-on-one, all on these topics of like, how do you communicate well? How do you captivate attention? How do you engage the people you're speaking with, whether it's one person or it's, an audience of 10, 30, 100 people, whatever it is? What are the techniques you use to speak effectively, to educate, all this kind of stuff. So I am responsible for materials on all of that. I create the classes, I create the books, I train others, I train trainers how to train, all of this. I lead a team of other coaches. So I coach coaches who coach other coaches. I do all of that. I lead a team of about 30 coaches. So all these things that I'm talking to you about today, these things are not just like my casual opinion. There will be some of that. I mean, there is going to be some speculation on my part, some firsthand experience, but the majority of what we talk about, the backbone of what we talk about, all of that comes from my, 25 years of experience as an educator, 15 years or so, maybe a little less. Let's say like 12 or 13 years of being an educator of educators. So there's a lot of seeing what works in the field that I'm bringing to you, that you can use so that you can, advance in your own areas, wherever it is in your life that you lead conversations, lead discussions, wherever you're in that position. That's what I can help you with. That's what I can enhance. I can give you new options to try to grow. Getting caught up on the chat. I see Thomas is with us. Yes, he is speaking French, but I don't know what that is though. He says bonjour. Did I pronounce that right? Bonjour. Which that means good day, correct? Which you just sort of like hi. I see Probes. Probes is with us. Yes, that's good. I like it. I see William also has joined us. This is so good. We're having a really good time with all of this. Friends, you know what that reminds me of? You know what that reminds me of? Here's what that reminds me of. Because we are still just in the phase of like, here's what's going to happen in this stream. We haven't really talked about any subject matter just yet. I'm just reminding you why you can trust, at least largely. You can always have some degree of, you want to try these things on your own that I share with you. You want to decide whether you like certain ideas. That's of course cool. But you already know, you have a sense that when I share things with you, that they are highly, highly trustworthy. You have that sense already. So we're still in this phase of just kind of like getting with it, getting ready to hear some stuff. And of course, in this phase of just getting ready, I have got to celebrate. This is a need of mine. I have to celebrate. I need to celebrate you. Thank you for being here. Whether you are here with us live and in the chat, whether you are here with us live but you are not in the chat, or you are here with us after the live, you are watching us on replay, however it is that you are here with us, I'm going to celebrate you at this time in this way. I have got my drink. I'm going to count to 3, and then we are going to do a clink. It's going to be so good. You're going to like it so much. It's the thing to look forward to. Fills you with, what is it, dopamine, the good feeling chemicals. You get all of that from this. It's really, really good. I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to do the clink. You are invited to cheers along with the rest of us as we cheers along and celebrate our togetherfulness. 1, 2, 3. Clink. Cheers, my friends. Man, that's good. That's some good stuff. Please like this video. Please subscribe. I could use some subs. Friends, we have this discussion stream on our hands, and it's going to be really good. It already is really good. You feel great about it, even at this beginning here, which is great. I also feel great. As I do traditionally in these discussion streams, um, my plan here is that I have like a couple of bullet points here that I can talk a little bit about sort of sporadically or off the cuff rather. But the main theme that you should feel right now with respect to the nature of this stream that you're watching, the main theme you should feel is that this is not meant to be a lecture. It's not really meant to be that I'm going to sit here and dispense this like well planned, articulated, perfect knowledge transfer. Like that's not what's happening here. This is just a discussion with an expert. If you like, if that categorizes it well with you. So less lecture and more inviting your um, participation, but not just participation, like co-leadership. I invite you to have a role in what we discuss. So if you are here with us live and you wish to participate in the chat, that's highly encouraged. I am going to keep us sort of on track of a kind of a direction of a topic, which, as the video is titled, influence and how it's related to attention and then just repetition, frankly. I'm going to keep us sort of in that direction. I have a couple talking points, but you should feel very empowered to contribute your sincere participations, the ways that you relate, the ways that you have ideas, the ways that you say, oh yeah, I do that too. When I talk about something you can try, you might have other things to add. You might even have some kind of question that you want to say, like, well, what about this or that and the other thing? You should feel very empowered to say those things in the chat if you're here live. And if you're watching after the live, you should feel very empowered while you're watching the video to put your thoughts into the comments for some sort of follow-up. Those sorts of things will continue to influence these discussion videos. So join us as we get into these topics. What topics, though? What are we talking about? Well, I'm glad you asked. As I say, I'm going to do a recap of the previous streams, the subjects we've talked about. I'm just going to pick out the parts that'll be relevant for the new discussion. And again, as I go through all this, think about what any kind of follow-ups you might have, or contributions or additional insights, something you feel that I left unsaid, something that enhances or advances something that we're already talking about. All of these streams, getting into the recap now, all of these streams, these communication-oriented streams, they're centered around this metaphor that I draw, and I shared with you back in the first two streams, the first two discussion streams. I shared this in great detail, and I'll recap it here. I see William is with us. That's good. William's really happy to be in the place. Baseball player 16 as well. I'm getting caught up on the chat here. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. So the metaphor, the recap of the metaphor. In greater detail back in episodes 1 and 2. But the metaphor is that of drivers. That is to say, technically speaking, from the perspective of computer engineering, drivers meaning the piece of software that allows two pieces of hardware to communicate. My regulars feel increasingly comfortable with this idea, and you're getting more and more of your own additions, your own ways of fleshing this out. But if you're not familiar with the previous streams, then we're going to, again, the brief condensed version of a recap. If you're not familiar with drivers from a computer engineering perspective, The idea is that if you think about some piece of hardware you have, like a mouse, here's my, oh, it's not really in a good position to show you. Oh, it's not going to make it. Oh, here you go. Oh, here you go. My mouse, right? I'm so excited that I was able to get that on the camera. Don't you feel fulfilled in that regard? My mouse. It's got a couple buttons on it. It's got a, let me bring it back here. It's got the left button and the right button, the left click and the right click. It's got the wheel in the middle. It's also got on the sides, on both sides, the like back page and forward page buttons. So what is that, 5? And then also there's the sensor on the bottom. So those are 5 modes of input here with the mouse. And you know that the mouse is a pretty simple device. That's like one of the most simple devices that you have as a part of a piece of a computer. But we just counted, what was it, 6? 6 points of input, and each of them, just if you think about like physically sitting there assembling this thing with physical materials, there's wires, and what do the wires do? The wires send discrete electrical signals. Here's a signal or here's not a signal. They send ones and zeros. And there's these wires that have to transmit that signal to the receiving hardware, which ultimately is going to be some motherboard or CPU that receives the signal from the mouse. So you take your mouse and you do a left click on it, and that left click has to be represented as some kind of ones and zeros. Those ones and zeros get sent through the wire of the mouse, they get to the CPU, and the CPU gets the ones and zeros. Now, at the point of the CPU, when it's getting the ones and zeros, it doesn't know what that is at all. It's just like, okay, here's the ones and zeros. It's only by virtue of this thing called a driver, the primary metaphor of all of this, all these discussion streams. It's only by virtue of the fact that the CPU has this thing called a driver for the mouse that now the CPU can take the driver and say, oh, look at this. I got these ones and zeros from the mouse. Let me look at the mouse driver. And, oh, that's a left click. So now this driver is what assigns the meaning. The ones and zeros themselves don't have meaning in them. Because if I take a different piece of hardware, a keyboard, let's say, we looked at a mouse, let's look at a keyboard. The keyboard has all the different letters and numbers and everything. Shift, Control, Enter, whatever, delete. All of those buttons also have to send ones and zeros through the wire of a keyboard, ultimately gets to the CPU, and the CPU says, here's a bunch of ones and zeros. I don't know what these mean. Oh, but wait, no, a keyboard driver. The keyboard driver now says, look at this. These ones and zeros, they mean you press the J. You press the letter J. And the CPU says, why don't you just say so, the letter J? And it goes and does whatever, whatever's related to that. So the straightforward idea is, if I had a list of all the things a mouse could do, here, left click is represented as 10110001. Right click is represented as 011001, etc. The back page is this, the left page, the forward page is that, and so on. And then I look at the keyboard and I say, all right, you press A and it's represented as 10011, whatever. B is this, C and this, and so on. You look at the list of those things, there could be some overlap between them. It so happens that you press the left click on a mouse and it's whatever ones and zeros. And just by sheer coincidence, you look at the keyboard and that same set of ones and zeros from the keyboard would mean what? The letter T. So now this is the crux of the metaphor I'm drawing, which is again the basis of all these discussion streams. That from the point of view of the CPU, the receiver of the signal, The CPU is just getting the ones and zeros, and that's it. So it could get, let's say, some string of ones and zeros. I don't know if this is a T. I don't know if this is a left click. I don't know what this is. It's only by it's only by virtue of going through this thing called a driver, or applying the thing called the driver, that it knows, oh, this is the context in which to interpret the ones and zeros. The ones and zeros don't carry meaning. It's not as though you're actually sending this thing called meaning or significance when you communicate with others. That's the metaphor that I'm drawing. There's no such thing as meaning in the ones and zeros. Cool, you have to have a driver. People likewise have something like that when it comes to communication. And this is a general principle of communication, although my greatest area of expertise is, as I say, in a professional context where you are leading discussions, whether that's a meeting or give a presentation or lead classes, or another kind of context where you're leading, such as leading live streams, leading a performance as a musician or a different kind of performer. That's where all of my expertise is in this area. And so when I talk about the communication and such, the way that's informed is simply by my metaphor of the means by which people interpret things. I'm saying it's like drivers in a computer engineering sense, but in a general sense for humans, people have a way of their own personal way of interpreting stuff. When you say something to them, what do they think it means? What do they, overlook, and what signals do they miss because it's not part of their drivers? All of that kind of stuff. I see Jack is with us. Yes. That's nice. Oh, nice. Emperor Kamikaze is with us too. Dope. My man. My man. And my assertion in the prior streams is that whatever you would call it on the human layer, this aspect of communication, this interpretive layer, that your efforts at communication, this is what I've been building up to. Your efforts of communication are best successful when you bring it to your audience, when you bring whatever it is you're saying or doing, you bring it to your audience in a way that they interpret. It's always a better philosophy. You'll always be more successful if you speak what they're ready to hear using their, words even. You speak their language. More so, that's of greater priority for you, more so, rather than you trying to express yourself. I'm going to try to express myself very well. That's a good thing to explore if you're an artist of some sort and you want to express yourself fully, but not in a communication context. In a communication context, there should be like virtually zero you trying to express yourself. You should be using their receptivity. That's what all of this insight is about. That's why I bring all of this up about drivers and a computer engineering context. By the way, I see Marco is with us. Yes. Oh man, that's so good. That's so good. Whoa. Thomas has some kind of emoji that is a thing of some sort. Wow. Some kind of thing. By the way, even as I have other drinks, this is not a formal everybody join us, cheers, let's celebrate our togetherness. It's not one of those formal moments that we do at the start of every stream. So I'm just informally having a sip by myself. But if you want to join those of us who are going to do it together, we'd love to have you. You're absolutely invited. That's the more the merrier kind of thing. But there's no formality to this. I'm just happen to be grabbing a drink. So I'm going to do that right now. And you're going to have such a good time as you observe that I have this. Whew. Marco says engineering is about people. I love the way you phrased that. I would agree that like proper engineering should be focused on people, the needs of the needs of the consumer. Proper engineering is focused on the needs of the consumer of whatever it is that you're engineering. That is a parallel principle. I like that you brought that up, Marco. It's also sort of like if you know anybody who is a UI designer, a user interface designer in the software engineering world or even the hardware world. Like I know many of us who are here right now in the live, and you're also watching afterward. Many of us are part of the this YouTube synth community. You may even know some people who are into the hardware design of synths or other pieces of hardware, music hardware. And whether it's that or whether it's the software user, UI designers or whoever it is, there's a common theme where they say things like, you know, it's never the user's fault if they can't figure out how to use the tool. Things like that. Like the less the UI should be so intuitive that the user doesn't really need training. The user doesn't need to like learn how to use it. It should just be straightforward how to use it. And I am saying something like that about communication. That is a proper parallel. I'm saying something along those lines that, like, it's never. Here's something that I tell people when I coach them, when I'm coaching them on either giving a presentation or leading a class. I go observe them and I see how they do their thing, and then we meet afterwards and I tell them, here's some things you're doing really well. We talk about why they're good, and I say you should keep doing that for these reasons. So I give them this full like breakdown of you know, why their strengths are strengths and why they should keep doing it. And then I also give them, here's some areas where I can work with you on strengthening this a bit. The reason you want to strengthen this area is da 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 da. Here's, you know, 2, 3, 5 things you might work on. Here's my suggested priority. You know, I give them this whole rundown of all this. And one of the things I do, or one of the things I say rather, when I'm coaching them, is I say things like, it's never your audience's fault if they're not engaged with you. Something like that. Like it's never their fault if they don't want to engage with you. That is to say, if you're trying to engage them. Like if somebody comes to me and says, I'm really trying to be more engaging in my classes. I'm really trying to be more engaging when I lead this meeting with my team and I'm trying to get people engaged, but I'm not sure why I can't get engagement. One of the principles that I always share with them is like it's never their fault. Like you can never adopt an attitude like, "Oh, come on, be engaged. Why aren't you being engaged?" Like you're never gonna that's not gonna lead you to success. You got to start with they're not doing anything wrong. I have to do something different on my end in order to engage with them and in order to get them to engage in return with me. So that's a core principle. And that is very, very similar to what I'm saying with respect to communication. So I'm glad that we're having these parallels drawn here because that's very reinforcing of how these, you know, across these different domains, you see the same pattern repeat. It's a very, it's a very responsible pattern. It's a pattern of taking responsibility. As the speaker, it's my responsibility to speak a language that you will understand. It's not ever your fault if you don't receive the message in the way that I'm intending to convey, to the degree that you need to receive it. I mean, no communication is ever going to be 100%. So you got to have some like tolerance threshold of how off is it okay for the receiver to be? How much error is acceptable? And to achieve whatever that acceptable threshold is, that's fully your responsibility, or at least that's the philosophy I accept for myself. I'm looking right now in the chat and I see that Marco is saying expectations are critical. Yeah, I would agree with that. You got to meet their expectations, and you got to manage your own expectations. Marco says, I wanted to chime in. Just, dude, do it. Do it. These communication streams are not meant to be lectures. They're meant to be discussions. They're meant to be open, what would you say? Round table? I don't know if that's quite the word. Maybe that might not be the word I'm going for, but something along those lines. Some kind of open discussion. So we got the idea of drivers. Everybody has their own sort of software layer in their psychology. There's a level of your psychology that is the filter through which you interpret stuff. And that's your drivers, your various levels of drivers. And if you're going to communicate with someone else, you got to do that. One common area, I wasn't planning to talk about this point, but here's a good one that maybe it'll help you to identify whether you have something similar in yourself. But a common area of maybe pitfall, you'd say, a common pitfall when I'm coaching people, one area where sometimes, I mean, this isn't everybody, but sometimes for some people, they tend to go heavy on assumptions about what the receiver will understand, like what they'll, like the degree which you can just be like, you can say something kind of inarticulately, you say something imprecisely and rely on, oh, you know what I mean. Like you can just assume the other person knows what you mean. Sometimes for some people that can be a stumbling block where they have too much of an assumption regarding what the receivers, the audience, what the receiving audience will just sort of get and know what you mean, and you don't really need to explain it any further. That's a common stumbling block. It's also very easy to overcome. So by the way, if that's something that you are needing, you do reflection and that's something you need to work on, you feel like you need to do less of assuming what the audience will be able to understand, then that's a very easy, or that maybe not easy, but a very attainable. That's a very attainable goal to work on that one. Nice. I see Nick is with us. Yes. That's good. That's good. I like it. All right. So where were we? I was just talking about that little side note that if indeed you have among your list of things you would work on in your own communication delivery, dimension of your life, if one of those things that you would want to work on is assuming less, that one is something you can make tangible, continued progress on, and you can feel good about yourself as you continue to make progress on that stuff. I'm available for all those kinds of conversation. I do this professionally. I've coached hundreds of people. Hundreds of people of all levels of experience. See, Apollo Hanzo has joined us. Yeah. Nice. That's good. That's good. I see there's also some chat for me to get caught up on here. Let's see what's happening here. Marco says, there's one driver I refuse to be critical about. That's fair. Yeah, you don't have to. I don't mean to make any kind of comment in any way, let alone any kind of suggestion or recommendation. I'm not even commenting on whether we like or accept or challenge any drivers or anything. I'm just saying drivers exist. That's it. In ways that you have no control over. You are you are navigating a landscape in which drivers are you are at the mercy of other people's drivers. That's what I'm saying. You navigate a landscape in which you are at the mercy of other people's drivers. That's the only claim I'm making. Whether they're good or bad or strong or weak or realistic or unrealistic, whatever it is, they got their drivers. You got to communicate with them the way that they are going to hear. With words they're ready to hear, with a tone they're ready to hear, with sentence structure they're ready to hear. Like so many countless elements. In any case, there was some chat I'm getting caught up on. What else is happening here? Got Apollo in the place. That's good. That's good. Mention that. Emperor Kamikaze said, it'd be nice if I could adjust drivers, do some kind of system restore to a last known good configuration. Underscore last underscore good. Jack has a question, a Q. That's helpful, by the way. If you do have something where you need a response from me, if you do all of your sincere participations, but there's one where you need a response, it is helpful to put a Q or a couple Qs. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for signaling like that. That's helpful. That makes it easy to find, which means you're likely to get your response. Jack says, what's happening? He says, what steps could I take or could one take when preparing to a largely ESL, English as a second language? If it's English as a second language, I would say my primary communication thought, the first place my mind goes, if you're going to speak to a ESL audience, first of all, how many people? Are you talking like one person, one at a time? Or like, here's a group of 5 or 6 people, you're going to speak into a room of 40 people? In any case, the first place my mind goes is that you use simple words just to make sure you're hitting a vocabulary that they are likely to have picked up if they're ESL. Because unless you know what their comfortability is, you could be dealing with people who it's very new to them, and they have a grasp of some good basics. But if you start using like complicated technical jargon, it's like, no, that's the kind of stuff you got to avoid. That's the kind of stuff you got to avoid. So that's the first place my mind goes, and I'm ready to hear more if you've got any follow-ups on that, Jack, regarding like how many people are you talking about speaking to, or if there's another element that you're trying to get a resolution on that I didn't comment on, then just let me know. Still getting caught up on the chat right here. Emperor Kamikaze says, you should avoid turns of phrase if you're doing any kind of translation. Yeah, that's the same theme of what I'm talking about. Avoid something that, how about this? If there's anything that would require them to have cultural context to interpret it, if they would need to have lived in our culture to know what you mean, that's the kind of stuff to leave out. Be literal. Be literal wherever possible. That, by the way, is a good general principle anyway. When you're speaking to a crowd where you don't know, you're not confident of any specific shared background. that's when your best strategy is to be as literal as you can. You can only when you're speaking to multiple people, the more people there are, the less you can assume about what they're going to understand. And so you have to start weighing things like, what are the points that I need to make sure everyone hears? And those are the ones to be more literal on, versus what are some other things I'm going to talk about that I'm just kind of like casually throwing it out there, and it's okay if someone doesn't quite know what I mean about that. That's not as critical. Those things you can be a little more casual on, a little more culturally, contextually relevant. Marco says, I learned something about communication today. That's dope. I did too. I learned a bunch of things. One of them is that people like it when you build them up. Some people realize that when they're like 5 years old. Marco continues. I had to do a low priority presentation, he says. I didn't do prep like I normally do, says Marco. I had some nice visuals, but my thinking was not well prepared. I stammered a bit. Next time I'm going to run through it. Oh, yeah, totally. I'm glad you bring that up. That's one of my primary things I recommend. I have a sort of the like entry to welcome to giving a presentation 101 class, the hour long, where I give the presentation and I model every principle along the way. So I'm frequently stopping and I'm like, hey, did you notice how I'm doing the thing and I'm showing you the thing? And one of them is preparing. One of the principles is preparing. That's like a, for sure. I recommend at least 3 times as a minimum. That's what, that 3 is the minimum quantity from which a pattern can be extracted. And so it facilitates your own, even subconscious preparation. Yeah, you're totally right. Marco is like got the 100%. Hey, can I give you 100%? People are giving me the 100%. But Marco is really the one who deserves 100%. I'll put it in the chat. Look at this. Can you believe this? Bam. Take that. That's what you get for participating in this participatory discussion. Jack says that it's good to simplify. Less is more. Ooh, I like that. That's such a good if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of phrase. Less is more. Jack also says avoid slang. Yes, totally. Totally. So going back to recap, we talked about the drivers again. And I made mention of how the whole point of bringing up the driver's metaphor in the first place is just to make the point that you need to speak the language they're going to hear. That's it. That's really the whole theme that we're going on through all of these live streams, through all these discussion live streams. So, in terms of where we're continuing forward with that today, we're building upon the idea of getting someone's attention. You have to go through their driver for that. And I've given you a little bit of tips on that we talked about in, I think, most of the previous streams since episode 2. So I guess episode 2, 3, 4, 5, because we're on episode 6 right now. I think, is that right? No, we're on episode 5. Sorry about that. This is episode 5 right now. So yeah, episodes 2, 3, and 4. We talked about the 3 primary principles that you can reliably count on for getting someone's attention. Because for the most part, anyone who is, let's say, like adolescence or post-adolescence, adolescence or older, these principles will apply. Such individuals recognize that they are individuals. Roughly by adolescence is when a person begins to develop a strong sense of themselves, strong sense of identity. So around that time and older, that's when all of these principles apply. These three attention grabbers, these three attention motivators that you can reliably count on to explore as a direction to get your audience's attention. And as a reminder, those three attention grabbers are empowerment, pleasure, strategy. Those are the three attention getters. Your audience, being adolescents or older, your audience being an individual, recognizing their own self, they are generally thinking about, what's most beneficial to me to pay attention to. They're deciding where to put their attention based on what's most worth it to them. Their clock is ticking. They don't have all the time in the world. What am I going to pay attention to this? So you got to go through that. You got to go through that barrier of, this is a sovereign individual with their own decision-making capacity, and they're self-centered and they're self-motivated. How do I get through that and get their attention? How do I convince them to pay attention? There's three main motivators: empowerment, pleasure, strategy. Someone will listen if you're promising them that they will be better at something. They will be more capable of something. They will be, more skilled at something. They will have more opportunities because of how much better they'll be at this. Look at how this combination of whatever is so beneficial for you. So empowerment. They'll be more capable, or they'll be more empowered. That's one thing that you can explore in your language, the way you frame things, the way you talk about things, what you promise them as a sales pitch, so to speak. Empowerment. Or pleasure. You're gonna love this. This is so good. Think of how satisfying this is gonna be. This is gonna be very fulfilling. Anything along these lines. You're gonna like this so much. You're gonna love this. That's a pleasure-based motivator. And then the final one of strategy. Strategy meaning, here's something you can do in order to avoid this discomfort, in order to avoid this pain, in order to be free of some kind of arduous burden, anything along those lines. That's the third type of framing factor that you can motivate someone to pay attention. Oh, you're not going to have to waste all this time anymore because I'm promising you this. That sort of thing. And so that forms the basis of today's stream in terms of getting someone's attention. So if you're considering further practical things that you can use in order to be more successful in your communication, by the way, you know that that's what I'm doing right now, right? You know that I'm framing it in terms of, oh, look, here's some things you can do to be really successful. That's me framing this as empowering you. That's the sort of stuff I'm talking about. Like, just make what you say woven out of this intention to fit within how I want to get your attention. What are you going to listen to? Well, hey, look at how this is going to make you more effective in how you communicate. I'm framing it in terms of, look at how, and you can even go back and listen to the whole stream here and count how many times I've done that. The answer is a lot. And that's intentional. That's the kind of thing I coach people on. It's how to be very intentional with what you say like that in very subtle ways, so that you sort of say your message without saying it directly, which is a more powerful way to communicate, by the way, especially to larger and larger audiences. It's not that you don't, like, you do still communicate directly to large audiences, but you also have to have the more careful dancing around and tiptoeing around um, framing, the way you frame things, the subtle languages you use, or language, choices of language. Marco says, nice advice. Does this apply to small conversations? It can in part. The problem with a small conversation, or I take that back. That doesn't reflect what I was intending to say. The difference with small conversation, like if you're having a conversation with a friend or like, 2 or 3 people or something, maybe you're having dinner with a couple people together. The difference there is that in that context, you're not universally recognized as the one leading the conversation. The principles that I'm bringing to you on these discussion streams are more about that. Anytime that you're in the position of everybody recognizes that you're the one talking, everybody recognizes that you're the one who is deciding how this discussion will go, that's when these principles apply, or that's when they apply best. In a small conversation, there may be moments here and there where sort of wherever the conversation goes, it comes to you and you like take the reins for a brief moment before it becomes whatever the conversation becomes. There may be moments like that, but I would say that's sort of relatively rare, unless you're some extraordinarily charismatic individual who's also physically attractive and you have like everything on the checklist and you always get all the attention in every room you walk in. Well, then, yeah, you can do the stuff I'm talking about all the time. But for the rest of us, no, in small conversations, you have to go with the flow more, and you can't quite take charge all the time. That's relatively rare. Emperor Kamikaze says, yes, I'm aware that you are doing the things. I noticed that. That's good. That's good. If you do see that, that's a pretty sophisticated level. In any case, so coming back to what's new. Almost everything in the stream, where we're at, 53 minutes. Almost all of this has been recap. Recap and other new little insights here and there. That's why it's good for you to continue to join us even for those recaps, because there's always new little things that I add. Someone says something in the chat and we have something that you haven't heard before. It's always good to have the full context. Emperor Kamikaze says, this stuff works. Yeah, it does. That's why I do it professionally. He says, I buy what you're selling, even though it's free. That's good. The not free part would be anyone who wanted a one-on-one coaching type of thing. That I charge for. But yeah, here on the live stream hanging out, I'll just share all the insights. Because it's one thing to have the insights, but what really matters is, can you apply it? Can you apply it right? And for some people, they're just sort of natural. They're just a natural at it, and they're very, they can pick these things up and go apply them, and they're successful at them right away. They're just talented in these areas. And if you are such an individual, then you would not need coaching on at least some of these things. And if you wanted to do the really advanced stuff, yeah, you could do the really advanced stuff. So far on the streams, we've had it pretty, not rudimentary, but I would say foundational. These discussion streams have been pretty foundational. So if you have strong foundations, then what I'm offering you for free, if you have strong foundations in these areas as a communication, discussion leader, which again, either professionally or this also applies if you're leading a live stream, if you're leading a performance as a musician or something else, anytime that you're recognized as the one who's leading the discussion. Um, yeah. So because these are foundational principles, for free, I'm offering you to make sure you're well rounded. That's essentially what I'm giving you if you're experienced in these areas, if you're talented in these areas. One of the things I like, by the way, one of the things I like when I'm coaching people on these things, it's so cool. It's so cool seeing how people are talented because everybody's talented in different ways. As I said earlier, I've coached hundreds of people on these principles and a ton of other things that I haven't shared with you yet. Um, Everybody's talented in different ways, and it's awesome. Like, it's very, very common that when I'm coaching somebody, and as I said earlier, I start by talking about the things they're doing well. And some people, it's like this is the first time in their life anybody ever told them that they're doing a good job and that uh, you know, they're doing well and they should continue doing a good job. And people love it. You can see it's very. I want to say it's inspiring, but it's also hopeful. It's hopeful to watch people increase their self-esteem. It's a beautiful thing, and it's really an honor. Maybe that's the word. Humbling. It's a humbling honor to be able to play a role in assisting someone in increasing their own sense of their own power and their own sense of their own inherent talented skill and capability. I forget why I got on that topic. Because I said I coach people on these areas, even their foundations and such. For anyone who is needing more than just the live stream here talking about some foundational principles, if you do need more, which frankly is the majority of people, not everybody is, is very experienced in these areas. I would say relatively few people are. So most people, these principles sound good, and you probably doing some of these here and there, but you might need a little bit of feedback to know when you're using the principles properly versus when it's very common in the people who I coach where when we begin they have a sense of like, all right, here I'm going to go and do the thing that we talked about. I'm going to try to apply this principle or technique, and then I go watch them and we talk about it, and there's so much room to be like, all right, let's turn this up, we need to do a little more of this. And they think like, oh really, I thought I was already doing that. And I'm like, oh no, we gotta really dial that up. And so there is for the majority of people, there's a tendency to have a need to have feedback from someone who knows what they're looking for, who knows how to um, amplify your strengths while also supporting your development. There's usually, for most people, there's a high need for a feedback person, a coach for that. That stuff's not free. I could do that stuff. I can do that stuff over Zoom. Um, but that's not free. The live stream's free. The principles. Emperor Kamikaze. Oh, this is dope. This is real nice. Can I pin this? Hold on. Let me see if I have the technical ability to do this. I don't know if I do. Can I? Dang. I was hoping I could put this on the screen. Looks like I cannot. But Emperor Kamikaze in the chat right now just put the fly insight. This shows me, this gives me so much confidence in Emperor Kamikaze that he's really like very much on the same page right now. That a fortune cookie can tell you something useful, but it doesn't do any kind of teaching or anything. Right. Right. So coming back to our discussion for today on attention. Attention. You know how to get your audience's attention. And again, these principles apply anywhere that you are recognized as the one leading the discussion, the one who's leading the meeting, presentation, class, leading a live stream, leading a performance of some kind. You're the one recognized as leading the discussion. That's when these apply. You get your audience's attention by the three principles, these sort of like general directions to aim in. And there'll be a lot of customization needed for every situation. But general directions are your audience will listen if you give them a good reason to listen, something that benefits them directly because they're a sovereign individual making decisions about themselves and what to pay attention to. So you get through to them. They'll pay attention if you do one of three things. You frame everything in terms of what empowers them. Look at how much better off they are by listening to you about this thing. If not empowerment, then you talk about some kind of pleasure aspect. It's so good. They're going to love it so much. It's going to feel great. It's going to be so satisfying. Otherwise, the third thing that people listen to is a strategy on how to maximize the efficiency or whatever and not waste their time anymore. How to stop with what all the pain and frustration is of this thing. How do you, tired of ineffective diets? Now look at this, all chicken fat diet. All chicken fat and Coca-Cola diet. You'll definitely get in horrible shape. That's a great example of avoiding diets that don't work. So you get your audience's attention. That's good. And in order to have any kind of influence upon them, which includes anything from convincing them to do some kind of activity, if this is at work and you got to get people to do some kind of follow-up, or if it's not a professional thing, if you're doing a live stream and you want people to like your video, by the way, like this video. How can you position your audience in such a way that you're maximizing the probability that most of them, all of these principles also, they're not like a guarantee that literally every single individual you speak to becomes transfixed and captivated by. This is just saying that the majority of the people, the most of the time, for most of the things you're talking about. That's all that is. You're always aiming for probabilities. So to influence someone, you get their attention first. And this also applies to yourself, by the way. What can you be honest with yourself about? That's where you can start having an influence. You know how to get attention. That's good. And once you have someone's attention, you promise them some kind of benefit to them that empowers them, that pleases them, that gives them strategy, effective strategy. Once you got all that stuff, now you have two new challenges to meet, two new needs to meet in your audience if you wish to have any kind of influence upon them. Influence being defined as impact their future decision making. Once you got their attention, the two follow-up needs or concerns are to keep their attention, and then also to decide what to fill the attention with. Now that you have their attention, what do you do with it? What do you put in there? Because they're only going to give you whatever limited attention you're benefiting them, or you're showing them that it's worth it to keep listening to you. So you got to keep reminding them about why it's worth it to keep listening to. This is how you like more effectively are going to get their attention and keep their attention, and they're going to hear what you're saying. So this is very good technique for you as well. That makes you a more effective communicator. It turns out that in the context of speaking, as I say, the attention, the types of attention that matter, there's a bunch of different types of attention. If you go look up modern psychological research on the topic of attention, there's different types of attention. But the two that I'm going to talk about are called immediate attention and sustained attention. Immediate attention is just like sensory stimulation, basically. It's like, what's happening right now? Well, there was a sound. That's immediate attention. And for most people, most of the time, in the general public, this immediate attention span is just on the scale of seconds, like 5, 10, 15 seconds or something. That's the longest they'll pay attention to anything directly that they haven't committed focus to. If they committed focus to like sitting down and reading something, okay, that's a little different. That's a different type of attention. But while you're still in the process of trying to get and keep their attention, while you're still this, while you have competition for their attention, while you're in that position, that's where you have this like only on the scale of seconds before they'll start thinking of something else or they'll move their attention to something else. If you're, leading a live stream, especially, it's how easy is it to, go do something else rather than stay engaged here with this live stream. So that's immediate attention span. And then there's also the other one I said, sustained attention span. That's once you do have some committed amount of attention, you've convinced them that they should listen to this. That kind of sustained attention span is 10, 15 minutes, maybe as much as 20 minutes. Depends on how much they want to listen to what you have to say. Otherwise, your audience is just, for most people in the audience, that's about the point, 10, 15, 20 minutes. That's about the point where they're just going to, and they got to go do something else because they were juggling all the million things in their life. And they were listening to your live stream or they were listening to your whatever, or, in a professional setting, they were putting down their email for long enough to listen to you. But the other stuff that needs their attention in their life, it's starting to nag at them after this 10, 15, 20 minutes of sustained attention span. In both cases, you need to keep bringing their attention back. If you want to sustain if you want to extend the sustained attention span, the 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's where you keep hitting them with that, one of those 3 attention getters, those 3 attention motivators. You keep reminding them like, hey, remember, if you use these tips, it's going to make you a better speaker. It's going to make you a better communicator. It's going to make you a better leader of discussion. I got to keep dropping that every however many minutes. I got to keep saying something to keep reminding you like, oh, right, that's why I'm listening to this. That's why I'm bothering to pay attention to this, because it is actually good for me. This does actually provide me with some tips that's helpful. Once I process all of this and I think about it and I start applying it, oh, this is actually good. Yeah, but I got to keep telling you it. I can't rely on you remembering that, because after 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's where you start thinking about some other things that you got to go do. And you got to go, get some food to eat and, all of this. I'm always competing. So again, for sustained attention span, one easy solution, one strategy you can apply, not every single possible strategy on earth, just one that's easy to apply, is just to repeat yourself in terms of, hey, remember that this is good for you. Remember why this is going to be really helpful for you. That sort of stuff. That's for sustained attention span. That's one strategy you can experiment with. For the immediate attention span, that one is more like be entertaining to the best of your capability. If you are the kind of person who's like sunshiny and you always got a big smile, this kind of thing's easy for you because you always bring people pleasure. And interacting with you is easy and nice. So you get the immediate attention very easily. For the rest of us, though, if you're not the everybody loves you immediately as soon as you walk in the door. If you have to work for it, to keep immediate attention span, that's where you have to throw in whatever degree of flashiness, whatever degree of like stimulation you can bring, whatever kind of pleasure it is to interact with you, whatever kind of thing you personally like and brings you joyful passion, however it is that they can have something that immediately drags them in with you, ideally on a feeling level. That's the gold standard, the feeling level. If you can't get the feeling level, then I guess the silver medal standard. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone talk about what comes after the gold standard. Is that a reference to like gold being the basis of currency, or is that a reference to gold, medal, bronze? I don't know. So that's the problem with not literal language. Now we have this turn of phrase that what does it even mean? The gold standard. Anyway, as I say, the more that you can dial in for immediate attention span, the more that you can have some kind of feeling that makes them want to keep having that feeling, that's the best. And that could be, um, I mean, the one that gets attention the most is fear. Fear or panic. That's what gets attention the most. But I don't advocate that you go about trying to make people afraid. That's not really ultimately that doesn't lead to good ends. So instead, pleasure or just joy or just fun. The more that you can have fun, that's good for immediate attention span. But if feeling is not really accessible and you don't have, jokes you could tell, or there's no good way to like organically weave them in or anything like that, then visuals are the next. Visuals are the silver. The gold is making people feel something. The silver is making them see something, making them in their mind, of course, I'm talking about. So that could be using evocative language, grandiose, evocative, exaggerated language. The more people you're speaking to, the more evocative language, not provocative, evocative, evocative. The more you can evoke in your audience something visual, something they don't have to try hard to understand, but rather they just sort of get it and see intuitively. And again, the more literally visual, the better. You talk about colors, you use some kind of visual metaphor. That's the silver standard. Gold is make them feel something they want to feel and they like feeling and they want to keep feeling. The silver standard is a visual. Beyond that, we get into, you know, maybe I would say like pleasurable sounding words. That would be the bronze. But by that point, I would be, if I was your coach, at that point, I would push you up to either visuals or feelings. You really got to do one of those. So you get your audience's attention, and I've given you some thoughts on how you can keep their attention. You now have a bit of a mental model on how there are two different kinds of attention that I brought up today. There's more than that. There's more than two kinds. But we talked today about communication in a sustained manner where you're recognized as the leader of the discussion. That has two basic types of attention span that apply to it: the immediate and the sustained. You got a pretty good sense of how to maintain both of these. Once you promise them something, as long as you keep reminding them of how good it is, you do that once every 10, 15, 20 minutes. You let the words come out of your mouth that, hey, remember how this is going to help you be a more effective communicator? You say it as the communicator. That's how you keep up their sustained attention span, 5, 10, 15 minutes, or not necessarily for 5 minutes, but 10, 15, 20 minutes. An immediate attention span, which is just every few seconds, the best way to overcome that is to help them feel something that they want to feel something that is good, some kind of pleasure, some kind of like amazement, some kind of beauty that could be visual. Try to do something that's evocative in terms of what they feel or evocative in terms of what they see visually, metaphorically, or you get a mental image. That's how you keep attention. But there's also the content of what do you do with their attention. And that's part of what the title of this live stream video is meant to suggest. That is repetition. The more you have, or the more you wish to have influence, the more you wish to influence and have an impact upon your audience's future decision making, the more you wish to achieve that, the more you should repeat, as the video title suggests, repeat the thing you wish to impact them with. So, like, for example, in these live streams, one of the big things that I'm giving to you, that I'm empowering you with to make you more effective, is I keep coming back to this idea of how you need to speak the language of the person or audience that you're wishing to communicate with. You got to speak what they're ready to hear. Talk in terms of what they want to listen to, their empowerment, their pleasure, their need for strategy. You talk in terms of what they want to hear. I keep coming back to that theme over and over and over. In this stream, in the previous streams. Why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep coming back to that theme? Is it because that's one of the primary things that I'm giving you? And that's one of your primary takeaways? And so therefore I'm repeating it? Is that what's going on? Yes. Yes, that's what's going on. I am repeating it on purpose because repetition is a principle of influence. You might even call it like the second building block of influence. This is my terminology here. First, you got to get their attention. That's the first building block, dude. There's no way around that. You cannot influence anyone whose attention you don't have. There is something, if you want to argue, like, can there be subconscious influence? Yes, there can. But I would argue you're still getting their attention on some level in that way. So you got to have attention in some capacity. That's the first building block of influence. But once you have it, the next building block of influence is you just start saying the thing you want them to believe. And repetition is all it is. Because, I hope you're ready for this bomb insight. I don't know if you were quite prepared for this, but I'm going to give you like the total bomb insight here. Here it is. The bomb insight is that people are not rational. That's it. That's the bomb insight. People are not rational. It's not as though people are sitting there like making these logical deductions about things. Day to day, in ordinary, just living their lives, do. People aren't logical. And I don't mean to say like they have some kind of character flaw. That's not what I mean. I mean to say like ordinary human psychology is not based on reasoning. Most of the time for most people. In most ordinary day-to-day things. What people do instead is they just go based on familiarity. They go based on what they're confident will work for them, what they're confident is safe. People go based on familiarity. And so in order for you to leverage the fact that people go with what feels comfortable with them, you simply repeat that. You just repeat whatever it is your message is over and over and over. And then because people get comfortable with whatever they hear repeated, you're now leveraging this basic, leverage point of human psychology, and you're making them hear the thing more. And by hearing your thing more, they get more comfortable with it and they accept it more. It's a basic principle of influence. So it's just repetition. And here's the insight, my friends. Here's the spot that people often need coaching and reminding on, is that this kind of influence that I'm sharing with you now, like in order to make them really get that big takeaway, whether you're leading a live stream, you're leading a gig as a musician and you want them to go to the merch table, you're leading you're leading a presentation or a class, you have a couple things that are the main takeaways that they got to really hear you on. That's what I mean by influence. They got to really hear you, and it's got to matter to them. You get that. The second building block is repetition. You just say it over and over. Because people accept what they hear over and over and over. The more someone hears something, the more they just accept it, and they think it's ordinary, and they think it doesn't need to be challenged. They hear something and it's safe. They hear something and it's safe. They hear something and it's safe, and they just come to accept it uncritically. That's how you can have influence, and you can be more empowered with all of this. You can leverage this basic principle that people accept what they hear over and over and over. As soon as they hear something, they accept it. They hear it, they accept it. They hear it, they accept it over and over and over. It gets this reinforced acceptance. By the way, for some of you listening to this discussion right now, you already know this principle, that people accept what they hear the most. Whatever they hear the most number of times is what they accept and believe. For some of you listening to this, you know that already, and you even leverage that, and you take advantage of it. For others of you, that might be a new idea, and you might be really open to it. For others of you, you kind of never thought about it, and you never really paid much attention to it. But now that I say it, it kind of makes sense that people accept what they hear over and over and over. And there's yet another category of people who are listening right now who at first disagreed. There's a category of people who are listening to this right now who at first disagreed. And they said no, but now they're convinced. Or if they're not yet convinced that people accept what they hear repeated, then they're becoming convinced, and they can feel the shift happening, that people accept what they hear over and over and over. And does that have something to do with the fact that I have said that over and over and over? Like, if you go back and look at the transcript of this video, how many times, what did I say it, like 30 or 40 times in the past 10 minutes? That I said people accept what they hear over and over and over. So there's a category of people who are listening right now who used to disagree. And if I had just let you disagree and I never talked about this topic any further, then you would still disagree. But because I said it over and over and over, that people accept what they hear over and over and over, now you accept it. And it's because I said it over and over and over. This is the tool you could use. That's what the repetition means in the title of this video, is that a very large part of influence, it's not about reasoning. That's what I'm trying. That's the unspoken thing that I'm trying to say. That you don't have to convince someone of something. In order to have influence on someone, you don't have to convince them. You just have to get their attention and then say the thing that you want them to think. That's it. That's it. There's no other moving parts. You don't have to reason with them. They don't have to agree with you on a conscious level. As long as you're repeating it, they accept it eventually. After repeating enough times, depending on how much of your attention depending on how much of their attention you have. Somebody who is paying attention is easier to influence because you have more presence in what they pay attention to, more control over what their influence is. But someone who you have their attention less, well, you have to back off a bit and you have to work harder on getting their attention and keeping it before you can start influencing them more powerfully. Even just getting someone's attention is influencing them a little bit. But you probably aspire to something more tangible. It is good to just get their attention, even if you can't yet get to the point of influencing their decision making. Emperor Kamikaze says, this stuff definitely applies to being on stage or the mic in any way. These are really useful, easy to remember tips, says Jack. Yeah, man, I'm happy to do that. That's what I aim for these streams to be. Because as I say, I do this professionally. I've done it for I mean, I've been an educator for 25 years, and I've coached other people something like 12 or 13 years. I've taught thousands of people. I've coached people on this subject matter. I've coached hundreds of people. I you really can trust this stuff I'm talking about. This is the stuff that works. I'm only gonna. I know that you have limited attention, and so I'm giving you, to the best of my ability, I'm giving you just an ongoing stream of things that benefit you. You have limited time. I want to give you things that are good for you. So yeah, you're getting easy to remember useful tips. It's all practical. It's all real. I'm only giving you the stuff that works. That's all you're going to get when I have these kinds of discussion streams with you. It's just going to be stuff that does practically work, that works with your audience. That's why I preach that as a fundamental principle, that you got to speak their language. My my philosophy is always to start by accepting reality and struggle not at all, and then learn how to work with it. And I'm giving you the shortcuts so that you can work with it very effectively. I'm getting caught up on the chat here. Whoa. Hold on. Oh, goodness. There's a lot here. Where were we? Thomas says there's something that he never thought of before, but now it seems obvious. I'm happy to do that. By the way, if no one's ever told you this before, that's the sign of a quality, let's say, communicator. There could be different ways to interpret that, but at least a quality communicator, like a really good discussion makes you feel like you see the thing clearly, but you never thought to phrase it like that before. That's how you know you're talking to somebody who knows how to speak. Make it simple. In the same way that if you pick up, a phone and you just know how to use it intuitively, you're using something that was a well-designed UI. So I'm glad to hear that. It seems obvious hearing it when I say it. Emperor Kamikaze says, you can always use phrases like clinically researched in order to sound impressive. Yeah, there's definitely language embellishments like that. We could talk about that too. There's always ways to, put the finishing touches. That's like the icing on the cake kind of thing. You got to get your proper core message. It's got to be a selling point that they want to pay attention to. But once you do have their attention and you're repeating your core message, now you can start embellishing it with that kind of language. And you can make it sound pretty and you can make it catchy. The more you can be catchy, I should add that to my notes. That's another thing we should talk about, being catchy. Because when something's catchy, that means that you no longer need to be the one who's repeating it, because now your audience is repeating it to themselves. So that's another thing we could talk about too. I added that to my notes over here. Probes has a nice, let's say, important counterpoint. Probes says that we should be mindful that this could have, if you overdo this kind of attention getting and repetition, then it could become quote unquote truth. Yeah, that's true. That's called brainwashing. I totally agree. And I don't necessarily push back on the idea of brainwashing in principle. Brainwashing is a social cohesion mechanism. So it has an appropriate use. It is possible to use brainwashing appropriately and in a healthy way. But I totally agree that it's easy to not do it in a way that's healthy and appropriate. So yeah, you're right to point that out, Probes. MK Ultra stuff, says Marco. Yeah, I mean I'm building up to those kinds of topics. So Marco is, we're very much on the same wavelength. That those kinds of things may be coming in future streams. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know for sure, but I definitely want to get into social control mechanisms and um, media brainwashing, those kinds of things. I love those kinds of topics, and as somebody who needs to leverage these principles professionally and who coaches people on how to use them effectively, I have a particularly astute perception of it when it's used in the media. It's like it's so obvious to me when they're doing all the like the attention getting with the flashy colors or the like rage bait in social media, and they do the repetition. Like all of these things are so obvious to me. Like I see the influence mechanisms of media, and I would love to lead some discussions on how to recognize those things and how to there's a very limited capacity you have to protect yourself. These kinds of influence things, you don't really have protection from them because you only think about what you think about in your mental shelf space. It always flies under the radar. It's the nature of it, is that it flies under the radar. But nonetheless, it's good if we have some kind of dialogue about these topics. And it's good if you talk about this stuff, by the way. I encourage you to talk here on the live stream, in the chat, or leave in the comments if you're watching afterward. But I also encourage you to talk about it elsewhere, not just here with me and the rest of us in the crew as we're hanging out together here, but also in, when you talk to your friends or family or coworkers. This is a good topic to normalize. So I encourage you to be part of that as well. Probe says a well-developed critical thinking ability should always be used to filter messages received. That is true in limited bursts. You can put on the very critical thinking ability while you're, say reading a book or something. But as you're going about your day, while you're driving somewhere, while you're eating dinner, while you're just doing nothing, while you're, I don't know, going for a walk or something, while you're gardening, while you're doing whatever, you are very much subject to the influence of whatever your senses deliver to your brain. You are in receptive mode at those times. And receptive mode doesn't coexist with critical thinking mode. Those can't coexist at the same time. And when you're not in critical thinking mode, you're more likely to be in receptive mode. And that's when, as I advocate, you should be in charge of what's in your mental shelf space. You should be in charge of what you're influencing yourself with, because that's when you're very receptive. Emperor Kamikaze says 90% of the people don't think much. I mean, that's true, although there's another half of that sentence that a lot of people leave out. And it's that it's not just that, let's say whatever the percentage is, 90% of people, okay. You could also rephrase that. This is my wording of what Emperor Kamikaze says here. This is my wording, not his. But you could also say something like 90% of people are NPCs. They're non-player characters. They're not really a participant in the goings on. They're sort of background. That is true. Most of the time, most people are NPCs. But the key insight to have the second half of that is that it's not always the same 90% of people in every context. In different situations, it's different 90% of people. In different conversations, on different subject matters, in different areas of expertise, in different, life experience areas. It's not the same 90% of people every time. Sometimes it's you, or sometimes it's me, that we're the NPCs in some conversation. So it's like a shifting 90%, or whatever the percentage is. But I would definitely agree that it's a large percent. It's a very large percent of people who are NPCs most of the time in most areas. It's just not always the same people. That's important for humility reasons. To recognize that sometimes it's you too. People look at you and think you're the NPC. That's an important humility principle that I'll also generally advocate. Emperor Kamikaze says it's difficult to succeed at malevolent brainwashing. Malevolent brainwashing, like, do you mean like attempting to influence someone to do something against their will? Is that what you mean by malevolent brainwashing, or do you mean something um, something different? Probe says it's a bit like hypnotism, that some people are suggestible and some are not. Yes, you're right. There is a threshold for everyone, but it is true. It's definitely true that some people are way more susceptible or suggestible. That's what Probe says. Suggestible. That's absolutely true. And other people are like more guarded, which means you didn't really fully get their attention and their trust. In the previous stream, in episode 4, we talked about trust. How do you get someone's trust? I didn't recap that content today, but that also is for that sort of suggestible influence, which is a more like you want to see a real-time change rather than play the long game. Because this repetition that I'm saying, this works even in the long game. It's not like you always want to see a change within a 5-minute span. Most of the time, you don't expect that, especially if you're applying this principle in terms of teaching a class, leading in an education context. Usually, you don't expect a 5-minute turnaround. Most learning is on the scale of, at least days, if not months or years. So you can continue your repetition campaign over the course of days, weeks, months. The repetition has an influence. The only thing that could counterbalance it is like some kind of overcompensating reinforcement of the opposite message interspersed in your repetition. So that's why if you can have an unbroken access to their attention, you have more influence. That takes us back to the social media topic. Takes us back to social media. That social media captivates people for hours. That's unbroken attention. A lot of influence there. A lot of influence. How about this? I'm going to make a very bold statement. How do you like this? You always hear these random, bold, concise statements when you listen to my discussion streams. Oh, no, did I lose it? What was it? Should I remember it? Oh, can I remember it? What was it? I was talking about social media, unbroken attention, having significant impact and influence. Oh, here's what I was going to say. This is my very bold statement. The sanest people, the people who are most sane, the sanest people have the most interruptions of their sources of influence. How you like that? How you like that concise statement? The sanest people have the most interruptions of their sources of influence. Meaning they don't listen too much too long to one source of influence, but rather intersperse them, hear countering ideas or perspectives. And that will facilitate the greatest probability or greatest area in which to maintain sanity. I'm still getting caught up on the chat here. I love all this discussion. By the way, we have covered the content for today. There was a lot of recap, but that was all very relevant because we were talking about attention. And then I introduced you to the ideas of not only getting their attention with the 3 principles, but also maintaining their attention at least, of course, according to two different types of attention span. I also introduced you to the idea that just hearing something repeated and getting more comfortable and familiar with it, that's what makes people accept things. Not logical arguments, not reasoning, not deduction. What makes people accept things, even on a subconscious level, on a feeling level, what makes people accept things and stop resisting the message, it's just hearing it over and over. So those are the topics for today. I have concluded my talking points, but we have a lot of discussion here in the live chat, so I'm interested in seeing what else do I have here. I still got to get caught up. I like the fact that Probes, you're bringing up hypnotism. Maybe that's another thing we should talk about. Most of the things I'm talking about are parallel to hypnotism. Hypnotism is just a little more suggestible or suggesting than what I'm talking about. But it's still basically the same principles. Oh, I'm still getting caught up from earlier. Emperor Kamikaze said he was joking earlier when he said that malevolent brainwashing is ineffective. He said, "No, just kidding. It's easy for loud, charismatic individuals." Yeah, totally. I was ready to have that be my response. That it was something like, "No, these principles even apply. Like, you can make someone do something against their will. That's not a difficult accomplishment." Now, it's true that if somebody has like a very firm will against something, well, okay, that's different. If they have like very, very firm conscious resistance, they will not bend on this. Yeah, okay, I wouldn't push on that. That's something you let go on. But for everything else, for the stuff that they don't really care too much about, you definitely can get people to do things that they don't want or they never would have wanted to do. That's pretty ordinary. That's in the realm of the stuff I'm telling you about, let alone the things I'm not telling you about. Yeah, totally possible. People just, the more they're inundated with something through repetition, the more they accept it. And that's kind of it. That's today's topic, and that's the principle. Emperor Kamikaze also has a Jedi mind trick reference. That's good. By the way, anyone ever heard of Jedi mind tricks? The rap group? Oh, probes. I'm so glad you brought this up. I actually had this point as something that I was considering talking about, but I didn't put it in my notes. Or if I did, I put it somewhere else. Maybe not in these notes. But probes brings up the idea that these sorts of things I'm talking about, the repetition, get attention through something that's immediately stimulating, whether it's a feeling or a visual. Get attention, keep attention, and then just fill it with repetition. That is a core mechanism or principle that many forms of advertising use. And I agree. You're right. I was thinking about bringing up advertising today. Probe says if it didn't work at all, they wouldn't spend so much money on it. Agreed. There is an element that nobody really knows exactly how much influence commercials have or advertising has. It's difficult to measure that. How do you know whether somebody bought something because they saw an ad or because there's some other reason? So exactly how to measure that is sketchy. And so some people argue against that. Some people actually say that there's no evidence that advertising helps anything. But I don't believe that. I do think advertising makes a difference. And perhaps it needs to have the domain restricted, as is often the case for many misunderstandings. It comes from a lack of context. So I would say where advertising helps, the repetition of something, Advertising helps when it's consumed by somebody who's likely to want it. That's when advertising is effective. An audience that they could be persuaded to buy that thing because they probably would have bought that thing anyway, and you're just persuading them to buy yours. That's the kind of area, that's the domain where advertising is effective. And it's unclear whether there's anything persuasive about random advertising. And nonetheless, the very large organizations, they might do advertising across a broad area. Let's have an ad during the Super Bowl, even though that's not really relevant nowadays anymore. That was relevant like 20 years ago and earlier, but not now. But yeah, I agree with what Probe says, that the big companies that spend money on advertising, they know. They've done enough testing that they know, even if they can't always target every individual perfectly, they know that, you stop advertising, it affects sales. You turn the advertising back on, it affects sales. They know that. They do their testing. Emperor Kamikaze says, I've paid for summer leadership videos that offered very little. This is good content. Good. I'm glad you like it. Once again, as I say, I do this professionally. I've taught thousands of people. I've coached hundreds of people. I really, legitimately, I truly know what I'm talking about in this domain. And my goal is just to give you content here in these streams that is just, like an endless rabbit hole of beneficial content for you. If you get even one good insight that helps you on these streams, that's good. If you take away, 15 things from every stream, even better. Please please subscribe. Probe says, I think that a person should treat every message. A person should treat every message that they receive with healthy cynicism. That would be good. It's like flexing a muscle. You can't do that all the time with everything. That's a limited state. And you can be in that limited state, but if you're in it all the time, you will be exhausted and then you will collapse anyway. Just like flexing your muscles. So I agree with you. If you're like reading a news article, that's a good time to be cynical. But going about your day, most of the hours of your day, you're in a very receptive, persuadable state. Emperor Kamikaze says, this is dope. Here's a heart. There's mountains of research on this. Yeah. Earlier, I said how I like giving you this content for free on the live stream because it's just general principles. A lot of this stuff, a lot of other people talk about this stuff. I'm telling you well-known, well-established principles. And I can talk about that for free on the live streams because, you're in whatever level of development you're in, where these sound familiar and you've used a lot of this stuff, but I'm giving you some connective tissue. I'm giving you a new way of thinking it that makes it more actionable. Or maybe you're at a different level where this is like opening up a doorway for you. This is like turning on the light switch and you all of a sudden understand things a little more clearly, and now you're going to start exploring things and making progress and else. Or maybe you're on a different level, whatever it is. I'm just giving you principles and you're going to do whatever you're going to do with it. And I do that for free. But the other level is that I could have any kind of coaching. We could have a coaching business agreement. That's not free. That's where I observe you and I could, give you feedback, as I was talking about earlier. But even beyond that, I think it'd be cool to have another sort of outgrowth of all these discussions. I plan to continue doing these discussion streams. I should be looking up at the camera more. I'm doing a not a fantastic job. That's another influence thing. If you're a live streamer, you're supposed to look at the camera. That's the thing. I'm just reading the chat so much, so I'm accustomed to my eyes being down, but I should be looking at you more. But as Emperor Kamikaze says, there's mountain of research on this. Yeah, yeah, it would be dope to have some kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Is there a way to Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd like to be of more use. I'd like to be more helpful and do whatever I can to be to provide more value for you. And I wonder if there's more than just talking about general principles on a live stream that I could do. Probe says, I talk about being cynical, but I might be described as an unhealthy cynical. I don't know, man. What you're saying today sounds pretty ordinary. And I've never, in all the times that we've hung out on here on my channel or in other streams, I've never got any kind of overly cynical vibe from you. You seem pretty chill. I think this is pretty normal. Thomas says, we like making you smile and laugh. To me. Thank you for this good knowledge. That's good. Yeah, if you like being here in order to make me happy, that's good. I like it. I love doing these streams. What is it? What are we at? It's almost 2 hours that we're sitting here talking about this stuff. This is a passion of mine. It's a really good stack of details. I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. But the fact that I happen to have a ton of professional experience at this, and I'm such an expert at it that I can package it for you in a way that sounds intuitive and that you can try to use, and it sort of I flip the light switch on and all of a sudden you're connecting other ideas and things. The fact that I can bring all that professionally in a highly skilled manner, that's cool. But if you also add in the fact that I personally just love this, I want to talk to you about this, that's a whole nother dimension. So if you're here for this, Thomas, because you want to make me have a good time, I'm glad to have you here for that, because I do love this. Aside from that sneeze, I'd be okay if I didn't have to sneeze there. That would have been all right. But friends, as I was saying earlier, because I've given you the bullet points for today. We've done a recap of previous, kind of woven the new topics of maintaining attention and then also combining it with repetition because people accept the things that they hear repeated. That's the topics for today. For any other thoughts that you have, for everybody who's here in the live and you're in the chat, any other thoughts you have, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to do a winding down. This is your pilot speaking. We are beginning the final descent. Please make sure your seatbelts are buckled. Let me know what follow-ups you have while we're here today. Anything I can give you a response on. I'm getting caught up on the chat here. There is a little bit. There's a couple chats I'm getting caught up on. Probe says this is a good chat. Enjoying talking with you. Thomas says it's 3:30 in the morning where I am. Whoa. That's awesome. Everybody in the community loves Thomas because he's always hanging out, even at inconvenient times for him. Thomas is like a true blue crew member. That's who Thomas is. He's the guy who you want in the, in your community. when we're in the after apocalypse and you got abandoned small communities, Thomas is the loyal guy you want. You want him in your camp. Probe says this is a nice Kleenex ad. Yeah, because I'm repeating, blowing my nose over here. Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. All right, friends. Currently, I am not seeing any subject matter related follow ups right now, which is cool. And if you are here in the live and you have a follow up, I'm still going to give you another minute or so right now as we do the final descent here in the stream. I'm giving you a lot of warning. By the way, that's another communication principle is that if you ever need your audience to take action, you got to give them a lot of warning. You got to give them a lot of notice. I'm giving you multiple minutes of advance notice that I'm going to close out the live stream soon. And I'm saying if you have anything else that you'd like a response on related to these topics of communication and influence, let me know. I'm giving you time to think about it. You might need 20 or 30 seconds to say, oh, actually, yeah, there is something. And then I'm giving you that time. I'm also giving you time to hear it repeated over and over and over. Hey, if you got anything, let me know. If you got some follow-up, let me know. All right, here we go. You got one more chance. Hey, we got maybe one more minute left. That's me repeating and influencing you. And that's just because I'm letting you get the best of my availability for you. Because for those of us who are here live in the chat specifically, because we're here right now, now's the time if something occurs to you, you can just let me know. If you're watching after the stream, I'm still available for you. It will just be through the comments or through a later stream. If you are watching afterwards, if you're watching the stream after the live, you're watching on replay, you still have a lot of influence over what the future streams are. So let me know. Let me know in the comments what your insights are, what you would add, something you thought landed really well, something you would like to explore more, something I didn't talk about. That's all appropriate for you to let me know. These streams are for you, to the best of my ability to bring you something useful. These streams are for your benefit. All right, friends. We have had a really good stream today. This has been great. Almost 2 hours. It's 1:57 and 30 seconds. Should we just like wait out the clock so that it goes to two hours exactly? And take 2.5 minutes here to like twiddle our thumbs a little bit. I guess I should remind you that I do intend to continue doing these discussion-based streams, and we're going to continue on these topics of communication and influence. And if you have a topic you want me to talk about, let me know. I don't promise to have expertise in like anything you might ask, but if it's related to communication and influence and education and speaking, if it's related to that stuff, and there's something you want me to talk about, let me know. That's appropriate. That is your invitation for that. Emperor Kamikaze says communication is breaking down in major sectors of society. Dude, that's in some sense that's kind of my primary motivation for doing this on a live stream. I care about that. It motivates, it hurts my heart and motivates my soul to help people to have more of an effective sense of like how to communicate effectively, how to understand how they're being influenced, how to more competently navigate the spheres of influence that surround them at all times. That matters to me because I feel like I do have some capacity to move people in a healthy direction, and we'll see if these streams are the most effective way to do that. But I know that y'all who are participating in these streams, I know that you like them and you get a lot out of them. So I intend to keep doing this, and I invite you formally. I invite you to tell me where you'd like to go, what type of topics you'd like to move into. We'll continue doing the communication basics like this. I'm going to keep repeating these because it's repetition, because the more I say this, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more you accept it as a basic foundational principle that we can build on. And I'll introduce more advanced things related to influence, talking about things like, choice of words, always speaking in terms of language the person is receptive to, how to help people become receptive. I would like someday to get into the topics of media, not just social media, but other types of media, influence, social control mechanisms like we were talking about earlier, all that kind of stuff. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. But for today, my friends, thank you for joining us today. Whether you are here in the live in the chat, you're here in the live not in the chat, you're joining us after the live watching on replay. Thank you for being here. It's so much better with you here. I feel you here. Whether you're saying stuff in the chat or in the comments, or even if you're not saying stuff, I know that you're here. It's a good influence that you have being here. So thank you for being here. I hope to see you in the next live stream, whether it's a discussion stream like today, or we go back to doing some music streams where I'm doing the improvised looping and the synthesizer and whatever we're doing. Hope to see you the next time, my friends. Please have a very blessed and very effective and healingful rest of your day today. And I will see you in the next Reconsider It live stream.